Boruto to Vortex Chapter 9 is out, with the title of Chapter 9 being Nine Tails. Now the chapter starts off with Jura expressing his surprise to have found a little girl when he was chasing after Naruto Uzumaki, and upon coming into contact with Shikadai, he pulls out a book just to double check who Shikadai is, which gives the impression that this book probably contains information on all of the Leaf Shinobi, so Jura most likely has read through this book. That's why he remembers who Shikadai is from the book, meaning Jura probably has information on literally everyone in the Leaf Village at this point. And after mentioning that Shikadai is the current Hokage's son, Shikadai says, "Yeah, so what? You have a message for my dad or something?" Which I really like this line because I get the feeling that Shikadai is saying this based off of what happened with Amato way back in chapter 44 in part 1, because Amato approached Shikadai for the purpose of contacting Shikamaru, who was currently in charge at the time because Naruto was sealed away by Jigen. So Shikadai is probably thinking, "Oh brother, here we go again," where he expects Jura to be doing the same thing. However, Jura explains that his business is actually with Shikamaru's predecessor, and they came here following Naruto Uzumaki's trail, which he literally just said in the previous page. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, you're gonna hear this exact same thing a lot of times in this chapter, and I'm actually gonna keep track as I go through this. So this is the second time they mention that they were following Naruto Uzumaki's trail, and I'm pretty sure it happens like 8 more times, but we'll keep track as we go along. In any case, though, Shikadai says there's no way Lord Seventh would be here, because 3 years ago but Shikadai cuts him off because he doesn't need to tell Jura about what happened to Naruto. And Jura says, "I see. Well, he definitely doesn't seem to be anywhere in this village, for the only Nine-Tails signature is coming from this girl." And everyone gets all surprised about the mention of the Nine-Tails, and Shikadai asks him to explain himself and what the Nine-Tails has to do with Himawari, and Jura says, "I don't know either. Truly, this world keeps raising one question after another. And yet, I like that." And I really like this panel of Jura right before he starts to attack to capture Himawari here. And Jura's curiosity in general is just, I really like it. He's just like, oh, this world has so many questions. It's so mysterious. And honestly speaking, Jura, at least in Two Blue Vortex only, so ignoring all of part 1, I think Jura is my favorite character of specifically Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. Like, I just like Jura a lot. He's been very good. He's my favorite character of specifically 2 Blue Vortex so far. Now, as we continue though, he starts to wrap Himawari up in what looks very similar to the same type of tree Moegi, Sasuke, and Bug are wrapped up in, at least in terms of its like appearance. And what's particularly interesting though is that the tree itself almost seems like it's specifically targeting Himawari's whiskers. Now that could be a little bit of a coincidence in terms of just when Ikimoto stopped drawing it, wrapping up Himawari before she gets saved by her friends here. But I found it particularly interesting because we know that Jura's kind of like targeting the Nine-Tails chakra within Himawari here. And of course, the whisker marks are a telltale sign of the Nine-Tails chakra within Himawari, so I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's a small detail I thought was pretty cool. Now, Team Inoshikacho then moves to save Himawari, and I just gotta say, the way Shikadai uses the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu to free Himawari was super freaking cool to me. He wraps it up. No, I didn't even get how this makes any sense, actually. The Shadow Paralysis Jutsu shouldn't be able to do this. I can understand if you use the Shadow Strangle Jutsu or the Shadow Stitching Jutsu to do this. I don't really get how the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu is even doing this, but it still looks cool. He basically wraps it around the tree and then he pries it open, and it's just really cool. I like seeing Shikadai use the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu this way. I don't know why it's the Shadow Paralysis Jutsu instead of the other 2 jutsu I mentioned, but that's besides the point. Anyway, Inojin draws a chameleon to wrap its tongue around Himawari to fling her out of the tree, and I feel like he could have put her down a little bit more gently than he did, but that's besides the point too. Now, something really goofy that came to my mind is, what if Inoji just like drew the 10 tails? Like, how strong would Inoji's Super Beast Girl 10 tails be if he hypothetically just drew a stronger thing? I don't know why. That's something I'm very curious to see. I doubt we're ever gonna see that, but I think it would be pretty cool. Now, Jura also thought this sequence of events was pretty cool too, because he says, How magnificent! Such incredible coordination without a single verbal exchange. A warning, out of respect for your teamwork, our sole target today is Himawari Uzumaki. We bear no enmity towards Team 10. However, if you insist on continuing to resist, we'll have no choice but to attack you. Now, I really like this line from Jura for a couple of reasons. The first thing is that it very much reminds me of something Jigen and Ishiki would have said in this very same situation. If you go back to chapter 36 when Jigen showed up in Naruto's house, Jigen says, "I simply came to take home my wayward son. That's all. We'll leave right away. I have no intention of starting trouble with you." And similarly, when Ishiki showed up at the Leaf Village in chapter 49, he was just like, "I'm looking for someone, a boy named Kawaki. Do you happen to know where he is?" And then when the other guy was like, "We haven't been told anything," he's just like, "Fine, I appreciate you not wasting my time or yours. Just point me in the direction of those who do know then." Like, Ishiki and Jigen are kind of just like, this is my target. This is why I'm here. I don't have any hatred, animosity, or grudge against any of you guys at all. I'm only going to attack you if you insist on getting in my way of my target. And that's basically what Jura says. My only target is Himawari. I don't have any enmity towards Team 10. But if you keep on resisting, I'll have no choice but to fight back. That's just a very Ishiki and Jigen approach to this sort of thing. The other thing I like is just the way that Jura really respects Team Inoshikacho's teamwork. I thought it was pretty funny, and I really just like that kind of immense respect he has for others. It's just really cool. I can only imagine what Jura would have thought if you watched Naruto and Sasuke's teamwork in various fights, like Naruto and Sasuke versus Zabuza, Naruto and Sasuke versus Momoshiki, Naruto and Sasuke versus Jigen, and so on. I can't imagine what he would have thought about their teamwork when they start doing even crazier stuff than anything Team Inoshikacho did. But in any case, Shikamaru contacts Shikadai to get a hold on the situation, and Shikadai informs him that the enemy's target is Himawari and that it has to do with the Nine Tails. So that's number 2 in terms of the Himawari's the target counter. Himawari doesn't get why her, which is kind of silly because I think it's pretty obvious by this point that it has to do with the Nine Tails, but we'll let it slide because she doesn't know about that yet. Meanwhile, though, Amato is watching Kawaki via Delta, either through a drone above her or through her scientific ninja tech eyes, and I really like this detail of Amato just constantly watching over Kawaki through Delta like a surveillance camera. It just kind of is a good addition to show his obsession with Akebi. Like, this man will not stop watching Kawaki for a second. That's the kind of vibe I get. And it seems to be kind of like a flashback of Amato watching this before, because it shows a panel of Jura flying above him, which looks just like one of the panels of Jura when he was like, "I'm not going to eat you yet, Kawaki," in the last chapter. And Amato says, "What the heck is this guy?" Which I really like. It just goes to show that this is not something Amato anticipated happening. So regardless of whether Amato actually is the one who sent the Ishiki message to Code, which I think, or if it's the real Ishiki, either way, the whole Jura, Hidari, Matsuri, and Bogue situation is not something Amato ever expected, and it's not something he has intel on. This is a genuine reaction. He's got the sweat bead on his face. He doesn't know what Jura is and why this is happening. It's not something Amato expected, which I like. And I like it even more so if Amato is the one who sent the Ishiki message to Code, because essentially, he, in a sense, is the reason behind this by manipulating Code, but it's going to cause problems that are going to bite him in the ass. I don't want to get too far into detail on that because I want to make a video about it, but I really like this for Amato. I like him not knowing about this, but I'm very curious as to what he will think about it in greater detail. Moving on though, this is one of my favorite parts of the chapter, and it's literally just Kashin Koji and Boruto in Orochimaru's hideout. I showed this in my spoiler video, but there's the exact same snake with an orb in its mouth on the wall as Orochimaru's hideout from Naruto Gaiden, and it's just literally the same design. It's unclear whether this has been abandoned or not, because to some extent it does look like an abandoned hideout, but I don't know why Orochimaru would have ever abandoned the hideout, since he's not a rogue ninja on the run anymore that needs to constantly hide from the Akatsuki or the Elite Village. Like, he's just underwatched by Yamato and that's it. So I don't know why he would have left it. But I really, 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 really hope that they do not drop the ball on this and that they actually incorporate Orochimaru into the main plot of the story, because I think there is so much potential they could do with that, because at the end of the day, Orochimaru has a lot of intel, he has a lot of research he's been doing on the Otsutsuki according to the anime, and then Orochimaru's just previous jutsu from the Naruto series is very much similar to a lot of the Otsutsuki stuff. His art of immortality and his curse marks are simply very similar to the concept of karmic resurrection. Furthermore, Mitsuki says way back in chapter 34, part 1, that Orochimaru is the one who mentioned to him that the Byakugo seal has ties to the Sage of Six Paths, and so there might actually be a deeper connection to the Karma seal than Naruto thinks. Truthfully, I had started to lose hope that they were ever going to come back to that plot point because, 50 chapters later, they still haven't done anything with it. But now I'm starting to regain hope because we actually have a reasonable chance of Orochimaru stepping into the limelight of the story once again. Not only that, we can get a reunion of the signing, at least in a sense, through Kashin Koji and Orochimaru's interactions, and also through Tsunade, because while Mitsuki did mention Orochimaru in chapter 34, in chapter 35 and 36, Boruto and Mitsuki were initially on their way to head to Tsunade to ask her questions about the Byakugo seal first. And so, if they actually do bring the whole Byakugo seal plotline back, like I hope they do, that gives us the potential to bring Tsunade back into the story in addition to Orochimaru, giving us a Kashin Koji reunion with Orochimaru and Tsunade as a kind of mirror to the legendary signing reuniting. Obviously, it's Kashin Koji instead of Jiraiya, but that's a really cool thing that we all want to see happen, as well as Kashin Koji and Naruto meeting up at some point in the future at least. So I'm really excited for that. Furthermore, something I personally really want to see from Orochimaru is a clash between Orochimaru and Amato. Maybe not directly, but at least in terms of their information. I would love to see Orochimaru point out something he's found through his research, I don't care what it is, that simply conflicts with something Amato has said or done. We all know that Amato is incredibly sus and has been withholding information time and time again. And I think Orochimaru is a perfect character to end up pointing out one of these loopholes in Amato's story. Again, it doesn't really matter what it is specifically, that's just something I really want to see, and hopefully I'll get my wish. Getting into the actual scene though, Boruto is holding his arm and looking down at his Karma seal, which is kind of a good build up to something that's going to happen later on. While Kashin Koji says, Boruto, they've made a move, where one of Kashin Koji's toads is looking at all the people who were stabbed by Jura in the previous chapter. Boruto asks where, Konoha, and Kashin Koji says, yeah, fly to the triangle. Now, we don't know what this triangle is that Kashin Koji speaks of, but based off the artwork, if I had to guess, it looks like that toad in the Leaf Village here is holding a triangular shaped thing that Boruto teleports to with Flying Raijin. So I think that's what he's referring to, but it could easily be something else. We don't know. Cutting back to Jura and Shikadai though, Shikadai says, let me ask you one thing. You said you came here following Naruto Uzumaki's trail, right? So that's the third time they've mentioned following Naruto Uzumaki's trail. But now you're after Himawari. Why is that? And that's number 3 for being after Himawari too. And Jura says, I'll be frank. The trail we followed is Ninetales', and we happen to sense his chakra signature in Himawari Uzumaki. Now, Shikadai and everyone else are confused because they thought that Ninetales was dead, and Jura says, as I mentioned earlier, we're surprised too, but we need to find out why this situation exists, and we'll at least get one answer by devouring you, Himawari Uzumaki. Everybody's like, devour? And Jura says, you've been warned, Inoshika-cho. Now, while telling people to go give backup to Team 10, Kashin Koji's toad says, behind you, Shikamaru Nara, but don't look back. Link up with Ino Yamanaka. Boruto's enter Konoha. Now, I'm not entirely sure why Kashin Koji really doesn't want Shikamaru to look back, because, I have to assume it's that Kashin Koji doesn't want to reveal his involvement with any of this, and if I had to guess why, I assume it's either because of the Jiraiya connection that he just doesn't want to reveal yet, or he doesn't want Amato to find out that Kashin Koji is still alive because Kashin Koji is aware that Amato expected Koji to die. I'm thinking one of those two make the most sense, but I'm very curious what you guys think as for why Kashin Koji just doesn't want Shikamaru to look back. And the funniest part about all of this is that it looks like Shikamaru is looking back at the toad anyway. So it feels like Shikamaru can see the toad out of the corner of his eye. Not only that, assuming there's a single security camera in this room, the cameras are going to see this toad anyway, but I'm not entirely sure if there is a security camera in the Hokage office. In any case though, Kawaki finally wakes up from being knocked out by Jura, and Delta's like, you're finally awake! Don't worry me like that! How could I face Eida if you died? And Kawaki says, quit yapping in my ear. The damage is almost fully healed. And Delta says, just cause you have near limitless regenerative ability doesn't mean you should be reckless. And I found this a little bit weird, this whole near limitless regenerative ability thing. In the other translation said some wacky stuff like Kawaki being basically immortal and having like infinite regeneration or whatever the heck it said. And I mean, yeah, Kawaki has self-healing abilities, but like, it was never that good. I mean, like, yes, it's good, but it's like compared to Boruto and Victor, no, theirs were way better than Kawaki's. Like, Kawaki's healing is pretty slow. I mean, maybe hypothetically, it's a slower regeneration, but it can heal anything, I guess. But I don't know, just compared to like Boruto, it really doesn't seem like it's that good. Like, I'm not saying it's bad, but like compared to Boruto, I just feel like they're really gassing up his regenerative ability more than it was ever shown to be. But you know, whatever. Kawaki, however, notices somebody's presence and says, hold up, we've got one other uninvited guest. And I found it a little bit funny that he called him an uninvited guest. Like, Kawaki's acting like he hates Boruto, which isn't true. He loves Boruto as a brother, but he hates Momoshiki, and all he can see in Boruto is Momoshiki. That's why he's so obsessed with killing him. Now, Shikamaru then contacts Boruto, reminds him that it's a private line of Inos just like before, and he says, there are two enemies, your divine trees by the looks of it. They supposedly came looking for Naruto, but now they're after Himawari for some reason. That's number 4 for reminding us about this. And he then says, it seems that Nine-Tails chakra is involved. Ring any bells? Boruto says, Nine-Tails? And I should also mention, this is also the 4th time they've mentioned the Nine-Tails' involvement in this situation too, so it's 4 around the board here. Kashin Koji seems to be listening though, and he also seems to have a mysterious expression on his face, so I'm very curious as to what Boruto and Koji will think about the Nine-Tails' involvement in the situation. But moving on, Kawaki approaches behind Boruto, which seems to startle him, and he says, sensory unit, Kawaki here. And I just thought this was really cool, the way he walked up behind just like, sensory unit, Kawaki here. Confirming Boruto's trespass. He's probably erased his chakra signature, near the Great Gate, right where the Jonin were murdered. I just kind of like this scene of Kawaki doing that. Boruto gets annoyed by this though, and Kawaki says, what are you sneaking around for? And those creepy monsters, are they friends of yours? Which I feel like is a pretty obvious no. But anyway, Boruto asks Shikamaru for a little more time because Kawaki's found him, and I don't know why Boruto acts like he can't multitask. We already know Boruto's about to one-shot Kawaki here, just like he did with Mitsuki and Code. He could probably talk to Shikamaru while he does this, but anyway, he says, and what are you loitering here for when Konoha's under enemy attack? Kawaki bounces back saying, that's some serious self-denial. You're the enemy of Konoha, Boruto. Boruto says, enough. Dealing with them is the higher priority. If you want, you're welcome to come along. Which is pretty much like what the point was versus Code. The same idea, it's like, bro, Code is the priority, not me. Same thing here. The Shinju are the priority, not me. But Kawaki says, are you mocking me? And then he activates his dojutsu, shoots some rods at Boruto, where Boruto very easily sidesteps to dodge them. So Kawaki tries again, and Boruto just dodges the other way, and Kawaki rushes in with a giant hand while Boruto's doing his like slow motion walk thing that he does, which looks kind of silly in this panel. And then Boruto one-shot punches Kawaki into the ground, which really surprises Delta, and Boruto says, pitiful, haven't you been training at all? While Delta says, more like, how much did you train? And I really like this very quick exchange of dialogue here because a lot of people have been saying this, like it doesn't feel like Kawaki trained, and understandably so because We know that Kawaki absolutely hated the shinobi way of training, as we saw back in chapter 58. He doesn't like that slow-paced style of training that Sarada wanted to do. We know that Kawaki doesn't want anything to do with Mitsuki. He thinks he's a creep and stuff, so he's not going to train with Mitsuki. And likewise, Sarada's very annoyed with Kawaki for everything that happened with Omnipotence and Boruto, so she would never want to train with Kawaki, and Kawaki wouldn't want to train with her either. Kawaki's also annoyed with Eida, who wasn't going to train anyway. She didn't even like fighting. And Damon's definitely not training with Kawaki. Bro doesn't even train in general. He's way too strong, and he would just beat Kawaki up anyway. So, like, who is Kawaki going to train with? The answer is no one. All Kawaki can do is train with himself, which doesn't fit in line with this whole life or death training thing that he did with Jigen. He needs a sparring partner to do that with. So, I'm really not surprised that Kawaki hasn't trained. And my favorite part about this scene is, after Boruto points this out, the first thing Kawaki does, almost like an act of desperation, a wild dog who's been beaten down, he activates his karma seal. This is such a good looking panel of Kawaki, angry, activating his karma seal. He looks desperate the way he's grabbing at the ground. I love this because, yeah, Kawaki hasn't trained. He relies on his otsutsuki powers. That's why he's activating karma in this moment. This is just so good with the theme of Boruto being a ninja, while Kawaki thinks the age of shinobi is over and he travels down the otsutsuki path of power. He's an otsutsuki killing otsutsuki. He plans to use the otsutsuki's powers to root out the otsutsuki, whereas Boruto intends to remain a ninja at all costs. I love this in context of chapter 1 of part 1, that flash forward scene. This is really good. Now when this happens though, Boruto's karma begins to activate as part of a resonance with Kawaki's karma, and Kashin Koji says, "This is bad, the karmas are resonating." Boruto starts to grab his arm and freak out, which surprises Kawaki, and Kashin Koji says, "Boruto, you need to leave now. Put distance between you or you're gonna lose control." And then Boruto immediately flies off in desperation, which I really like too because technically speaking, it would make more sense to use flying Raijin here to escape so that Kawaki literally can't follow him. But it almost seems like an act of desperation where he's not thinking clearly. It shows he can make mistakes. He's desperately trying to get away and he's not thinking clearly. I think that's really good. Now Kawaki is surprised by this exchange of events, saying he can't control his karma, which I really like. I'm very curious to see what Kawaki will do with this newfound information moving forward. Now, kind of taking a step back here, there are quite a few things I want to talk about. I'll start with the whole Boruto can't control his karma situation. I'm very, very happy about this. I went on for quite a bit about this in my spoiler review, but this just makes me very happy. It's something I really wanted to happen because I want Momoshiki to be a relevant threat, and this just works very well. I don't know exactly what happened over the time skip to make Boruto and Kashin Koji realize this. I have to imagine at some point though, Momoshiki must have taken control, because by the end of part 1, Boruto did not think this was going to be a problem. That's why he stopped taking Amato's pills, and that's why he even fought back against Kawaki in the first place. Back in chapter 66, Boruto thought it was a problem, that's why he let Kawaki kill him. But afterwards, he decided it wasn't a problem anymore, and that's why he continuously fought back against Kawaki. And if anything, after chapter 80, Boruto probably thought this was even less of a problem than before, because Momoshiki was wrong and Momoshiki failed. He did not take over Boruto like he wanted to and expected to. Boruto won that battle. So something had to have happened over the time skip to make them fear the karma seal like this, which I'm very interested to see what that flashback will look like. But I stand by the fact that I think that this scene, whatever happened over the time skip with Boruto and Momoshiki, should have happened at the end of part 1. I'm making that a thing in 2 of my rewrite videos for the end of part 1, which just happened to work perfectly with the situation like I was hoping it would. But I think that would have been a lot better. I'm just gonna leave it at that for now instead of rambling on for 2 hours because, well, I'm making a video on it and I'll let you guys decide whether you like it better or not. Either way though, I'm happy that this is the thing here in Boruto 2 Vortex. Backtracking a little bit further though, in regards to the actual Boruto versus Kawaki fight, this fight did what it needed to do in terms of Boruto absolutely dominating Kawaki very quickly, and I'm sure that's going to have the proper effect of pretty much driving Kawaki into madness, further pursuing his otsutsuki power, very similar to Sasuke versus Itachi back in part 1 during the Search for Tsunade arc. I get a very similar vibe in terms of the effect of this fight and what it's going to do. However, if I'm being completely honest, the execution of this Boruto vs Kawaki fight is nowhere near as good as Itachi vs Sasuke. From start to finish, that fight just had so much more to it. The scene of Sasuke approaching Itachi had more feeling behind it. Sasuke's anger, when he starts ripping at his shirt, he activates Chidori and he's like, I've lived my life for one single purpose, to see you die! Like, that just had more oomph to it. Then he charges in at Itachi, and rather than just, dodging and punching Sasuke, Itachi grabs the Chidori. He completely nullifies the attack, and then he starts to just beat him. He's kneeing him in the face, kicking him in the wall, beating him down. I just feel like, I know obviously with the anime music in the background, it makes it even more impactful, but even in the manga version, I just felt like there was more to it. Obviously, Boruto's not trying to put up some act that he hates Kawaki. He really is just trying to one-shot him, but I just feel like the way it was done with Itachi, just beating the shit out of Sasuke, I had more feeling to it, and then he does the Tsukuyomi to finish him off. Like, I just feel like that just felt better to me than this. I'm not saying this was like some god-awful piece of trash, but by comparison to Naruto, and yes, I'm gonna compare Boruto to Naruto because it's the sequel series, I just think the Itachi vs Sasuke one was done better. Maybe you'll disagree. I just didn't get the same feeling behind this. Just felt like another one of those, yeah, Boruto's way stronger than everyone moments where he beat him up. However, like I said, I really do like the quick exchange of dialogue where Boruto's just like, have you been training at all? I really like that line, because the answer is no. Kawaki probably hasn't been training, either because of his own arrogance thinking he was plenty strong, the fact that he had so much Otsutsuki power via Ishiki, or because he kind of got content with his life in Konoha. Regardless of the reason, I think the answer is no. Kawaki really hasn't been training, whereas in Boruto's case, he's been training like crazy compared to everyone else. And I am still curious to see what exactly Boruto did for his training, and I'm even more curious now whether Orochimaru has any involvement with this, because we did see how much stronger Orochimaru made Sasuke, so I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happened with Boruto too. Moving on with the chapter though, we cut back to Team Shikacho versus Jura, where Shikadai tells him not to get distracted because, they're the ones he's fighting, and he's like, oh, right. That's too bad, as he forms a tailed beast bomb with one of his eyes, which I thought was pretty cool and interesting because, normally when a tailed beast does a tailed beast bomb, they just do it, they open their mouths when they do it, but it's never been like an eye ability, so I'm unsure why Jura closes one eye as he does this. I don't know if they're ever going to explain it, to be honest, but it's never been a Rinnegan ability by any means, so I'm a little bit curious about the closing the eye aspect. It's cool looking. I'm just curious as to some of the mechanics behind it. Is it related to Jura's dojutsu? Is he just doing it to focus his eyesight with one eye for some reason? I don't know, but it was cool. And then of course it launches, it makes a giant explosion in the distance. Sarada and Sumire are on their way to the scene as well, which means that we should be getting a Sarada and Hidari confrontation in the near future here. Not necessarily next chapter, although very well could be next chapter, but pretty soon we should be getting the Sarada and Hidari confrontation, so I'm sure everyone will be excited to see that happen there. Now Inoji then picks up Shikadai and Chocho and starts to carry them off in the distance, and Hidari says, they're getting away. That okay? Jura says, our target is Himawari Uzumaki. Make that number 5 for that one. They knew all they had to do was hand her over, but they intend to keep resisting to the bitter end, at the risk of death. Hidari says, fools. They don't seem too intelligent, which I thought was funny. But Jura says, that's not true. Something is driving them past their own survival instincts. What that something is likely to be crucial information for us as well. And once again, I just love the curiosity of Jura. He's interested in humanity here. He's wondering, what is it that could push them past their own survival instincts? The instinctual thing is important because Jura previously was like, give in to your instincts. Eat the person that you instinctually desire to eat. That was the whole thing in chapter 5. However, he's witnessing them going past their own instincts, and he wants to learn how and why that is, which I think is really interesting because that could be an indication that further down the line, Jura, Hidari, and everyone else might end up going against their instincts to devour an otsutsuki. They very well may pursue a different goal instead, which I think could be really cool for developing Jura as a unique villain compared to what any other Ten Tails or otsutsuki would do. As it already is, we know that Momoshiki's goal is to feed Kawaki to the Ten Tails to grow a divine tree and eat the chakra fruit. As it stands, you would think that Momoshiki would probably want to be on Jura's side, at least at first, be like, hey, go, I'll help you eat Naruto, he's trapped in Daikoku-ten, let's have Kawaki release him, then eat Naruto, then boom, go ahead and eat Kawaki, I'll eat the fruit after. That's probably Momoshiki's initial perspective at least. However, if Jura starts to pursue a different goal completely different from the usual Ten Tails Divine Tree Chakra Fruit nonsense, that could pit Momoshiki against Jura, which I think would be another interesting dynamic moving forward. So I'm very curious to see what Jura will learn from the humans of the Leaf Village. I think there's a lot of potential there. Now, because of Jura's immense display of power, Shikanai pretty wisely realizes that, hey, as long as we stick with Himawari, they probably won't unleash that massive Biju bomb again, because otherwise they would kill Himawari, which they don't want to do because they want to devour her, so they should stick together and see what they will do next. They then propose flying out of the village in order to lead Jura away from the Leaf Village, but Himawari asks Inojin to drop her off somewhere alone so that way she can escape by herself. Inojin and Shikanai, of course, do not agree with this idea because they're well aware that Jura will catch her, like she is not going to be able to escape on her own, but Himawari is well aware of that. The problem is, she knows that it's the same for the whole group. Jura and Hidari are way too strong for them to handle, meaning that they're all gonna die at this rate, so better have her die alone than have the entire group die. That's basically Himawari's perspective, which I think is, pretty understandable for someone like Himawari to prioritize the group over herself, feels pretty in character. But then Himawari gets distracted as she sees herself on a puddle of water, which very much reminds me of the scene when Naruto was talking to Kurama, when Kurama faded away after the Baryon Mo vs Ishiki fight. It looks like a very similar background, and that's when Kurama appears saying, "Good grief, I can't believe that jerk Ten Tails would sniff me out. Little girl, you know who I am?" And Himawari says, "You're Nine Tails, right?" So, having seen 3 different translations of this scene by this point, I get the feeling that this is the same old Kurama that we know and love, which personally I prefer over like a new Kurama, because I just like Kurama too much. I never wanted him to die in the first place. That's not to say I'd be totally against a new Kurama, where we get a similar situation as to what Kashin Koji is to Jiraiya, or what Hidari is to Sasuke. I definitely think there's potential for a new Kurama to be a similar sort of thing where he ends up being really cool, but at least as of right now, I'd rather just have the real Kurama be back. And I get the feeling that it is the real Kurama, because just the way the dialogue is done here, it just seems like Kurama saying this, and he's just like, you know who I am, right? I'm Kurama. So that's just the vibe I get. Curious what you guys think, if you think it's the real Kurama or if you think it's a new Kurama. But as of right now, I think it's the old Kurama, but there's simply less of his chakra than there was before, which is why he's tiny like a baby now. Either because, Himawari just doesn't have that much of Kurama's chakra and it's gonna stay this way, or because he just very recently began to reincarnate via the chakra that remained inside Himawari because of genetics from birth. So it's possible he'll grow back into full size within Himawari, but it's also possible he's just gonna remain tiny like this. We'll have to wait and see. I'm not fully sure what I think will happen. And I do think it's possible that this little Kurama has always been inside Himawari while the big Kurama was inside Naruto. However, personally, I currently think that there wasn't a little baby Kurama soul inside Himawari beforehand. I think it only went there after he faded away with Baryon mode, and so his soul transferred over to Himawari, but even that might not have happened immediately. It might have taken around 3-ish years before Kurama's soul began to reincarnate inside Himawari, where the largest portion of his chakra resided. I think Boruto theoretically could have been another option since he does have the whisker marks too, but because of Momoshiki's presence, or because Himawari simply inherited more of Kurama's chakra, I think the end result ended up being Himawari rather than Boruto, which I personally prefer, because why have freaking Boruto have both Kurama and Momoshiki. That's just overkill and dumb. Better to have Himawari have Kurama in this case here. I'm also very curious though, in the far, far future, when Naruto comes back, what will Kurama do? Is he going to, or even going to be able to return to Naruto? Will he just stick with Himawari forever? It's something to think about here. Now, another thing to think about is Naruto, like Himawari, also had those whisker marks from birth because he was the son of a pregnant Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, indicating that Kurama's chakra was probably integrated into Naruto's body via genetics from birth in the exact same manner that was the case for Himawari too. In other words, it is theoretically possible that Kurama could have reincarnated inside Naruto in the exact same way that he appears to have done with Himawari here. Theoretically, it's possible that he could have done this to Naruto too. However, Naruto's obviously trapped in Daikoku 10, so why the heck would Kurama ever want to go to Naruto just to be trapped in Daikoku 10? It makes sense for him to choose Himawari in this case. My question though is, could he have theoretically done the same with Naruto? And I feel like, at the very least, it's possible he could have, but understandably he wouldn't here because Naruto's trapped in Daikoku 10. Makes a lot more sense to choose Himawari in this case here. Also similarly, could he have chosen Boruto if he wanted to? Not that he ever would because of Momoshiki, but could he have? I feel like the answer is yes to all three, but if Himawari had the most of his chakra inherited from birth, then I think it's also possible he would just default to Himawari because that's where most of the chakra resided. Anyway though, I'm happy to see Kurama come back. Never wanted him to die in the first place, so it makes my heart happy. But I want to hear what you guys think about every single thing I rambled on about this chapter. There's a pretty long review here, so I don't even remember half the stuff I talked about, but what do you guys think about the Orochimaru hideout situation? Are you excited to hopefully see Orochimaru return to the story like I am? What do you think about the Boruto Karma Seal situation? Are you happy to see that Boruto can't control Karma, knowing that it means Momoshiki is a threat? How do you feel about the end of part 1 in relation to that, which again I don't want to ramble about, but if you know, you know. What do you think about Kurama's return? What do you think about Jura's personality and the potential that he may change goals and go against his instincts, which seems to be what he wants to learn from Team Inoshikacho? What do you think will happen if Jura devours a target, whether it's Naruto or Himawari? What do you think Kawaki is going to do now that he knows that he's A, way weaker than Boruto, and B, Boruto can't control his Karma Seal? What do you think his next move will be? What do you think Amato's response is going to be to this whole Jura situation and the threat of Kawaki being taken by Jura? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how annoyed are you getting with this endless recapping that Boruto 2 Blue Vortex keeps on doing? Whether it's the endless Omnipotence recaps, Mitsuki's Sun and Moon recaps, or the fact that Jura was after Naruto but is now after Himawari because of the Nine-Tails Chakra recaps, and so on. Because I'm starting to get a little bit annoyed because there is a lot of recapping that keeps being done every single chapter, and I feel like they could like lay off a little bit on the recapping because we already know this stuff, and instead they could focus on things we don't know, like how Amato reconstructed Kawaki's Karma Seal, where is Orochimaru, what kind of information does he have, where is Kakashi, what's the connection between the Byakugo Seal and the Karma Seal, how did Kurama reincarnate, and so on. Some of these things we probably will get answers to, but some of them I'm honestly not so sure if we ever will. I'm not fully confident if they'll ever explain how Amato reconstructed Kawaki's Karma Seal. I'm not fully confident if we will get that Byakugo Seal explanation. I hope we get these things, but I'm not fully sure. But I'd rather they focus on answering these questions instead of recapping Omnipotence and frickin' Jura's target over and over and over again, but I'm gonna stop ranting about that for now, and I want to hear what you guys think about all that stuff I just said. But that's a wrap on today's video, so thank you guys for watching until the end.
You're already under my genjutsu.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, like the video, check out my podcast channel, check out Peak Fiction, become a member, and hit the bell icon for notifications.
Sorry, Sasuke. Maybe some other time.
Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.